Look at your to-do list right now. No, really. Think about it in your mind's eye. Somewhere on that list, or perhaps hidden on a sticky note you keep ignoring, is a single task you have been pushing off. You wrote it down on Monday. By Wednesday, you crossed it out and moved it to Friday. By Friday, you decided it was a next week kind of problem. Maybe it's not even a written task. Maybe it's a difficult conversation you need to have with your partner. An email you are terrified to send to your boss. Or a creative project you've been dreaming about, but refuse to actually start. Notice how your body reacts just thinking about it right now. There is a subtle tightening in your chest. Your breathing gets a little shallower. A heavy, hollow feeling settles in the pit of your stomach. What do you do when that feeling arises? You probably pick up your phone. You open a social media app. You suddenly decide that your desk needs to be perfectly clean before you can do any real work. You run. We all do it. We are absolute masters of distraction, constantly engineering ways to avoid the friction of uncomfortable tasks. But here is the brutal, life-altering truth that you need to hear today. The avoidance is not making the problem disappear. In fact, it is doing the exact opposite. The life you desperately want, the financial freedom, the deep and authentic relationships, the career fulfillment, the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are living up to your potential, is not going to be found in the easy things. It is not found in your comfort zone, and it is certainly not found in scrolling through another short-form video. The life you want is hiding exactly behind the things you are actively avoiding. The obstacle in your path is not blocking your destination. The obstacle is the destination. Until you realize that your resistance is pointing you directly toward your breakthrough, you will remain trapped in a prison of your own making, constantly running from the exact keys that could set you free. Today, we are going to change how you look at fear and show you how to finally stop running. Part 1. The psychology of avoidance. To stop running, you first need to understand why you are running in the first place. You need to forgive yourself. Because your avoidance is not a symptom of laziness, a lack of discipline, or a flawed character. It is an evolutionary survival mechanism operating exactly as it was designed to. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, your brain was wired with one primary directive: keep you alive. To do that, it learned to conserve energy and avoid pain at all costs. If our ancestors saw a dark cave that might house a predator, their brains flooded them with anxiety to keep them out of it. Today, there are no saber-toothed tigers lurking in our offices or living rooms. But your brain doesn't know the difference between the physical threat of a predator and the psychological threat of a possible rejection, a potential failure, or an awkward conversation. When you face a daunting task, your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, sounds the alarm. It screams, "This is uncomfortable. This might hurt our ego. Retreat to safety." So you retreat. You watch Netflix. You feel a sudden warm rush of relief. But this relief is a toxic illusion. Enter the Zeigarnik Effect, a psychological principle stating that human beings remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks much better than completed ones. When you avoid something, it doesn't leave your mind. Instead, it gets pushed to the background, running like a hidden app on your smartphone that silently drains your battery. That avoided task stays open in your mental browser, constantly consuming cognitive energy, generating a low-level, chronic anxiety that hums beneath the surface of your daily life. You think you are choosing comfort by avoiding the difficult conversation or the hard work, but you are actually choosing a prolonged, exhausting state of dread. The psychological cost of avoiding a task is almost always heavier than the physical and mental effort required to just do the task. You are trading a momentary sting of discomfort for a permanent state of stagnation. You are paying a massive tax on your peace of mind, all to protect a version of yourself that you are actively trying to outgrow. Part 2. The story of the locked door. To truly understand the tragic cost of this avoidance, imagine a woman named Sarah. Sarah is incredibly smart, deeply empathetic, and highly capable. She has been working at the same company for 5 years, delivering excellent results. But she is vastly underpaid and her ideas are routinely overlooked. She knows she deserves a promotion. She knows she needs to walk into her manager's office and demand the compensation and respect she has earned. But Sarah hates conflict. The mere thought of negotiating makes her palms sweat. So she convinces herself of a comforting lie. If I just keep working hard, they will eventually notice me and give me what I deserve. This is her mechanism of avoidance. Months turn into years. She stays in her comfort zone. But here is the secret about the comfort zone. It does not stay the same size. If you do not expand it, it actively shrinks. What was once a cozy, safe space for Sarah slowly becomes a suffocating, resentful cage. She watches less capable colleagues get promoted while she remains invisible, drowning in a quiet bitterness. Think of Sarah's life as a long, beautiful hallway lined with doors. The door labeled Career Growth sits right in front of her. But in her mind, there is a terrifying, fire-breathing monster standing guard at that door. That monster is her fear of rejection and conflict. Because she refuses to face the monster, she never touches the doorknob. She lives her entire life in the hallway. What Sarah doesn't realize, and what most of us fail to realize, is that the monster is a hologram. It is an illusion projected by her own nervous system. If she were to close her eyes, walk straight through the projection, and turn the handle, she would find that the door isn't even locked. On the other side isn't a magical, pain-free world, but rather the next hallway, a better hallway. Opening the door might be incredibly uncomfortable for 5 minutes, but staying in the hallway means being uncomfortable for 5 decades. The thing you are avoiding is just a door, and right now, you are letting a ghost stop you from walking through it. Part 3. The resistance as a compass. If you want to unlock the next level of your life, you have to initiate a radical paradigm shift in how you view fear, hesitation, and discomfort. Right now, when you feel that heavy resistance toward a task, you interpret it as a stop sign. You think, I feel anxious about doing this, which must mean I shouldn't do it, or I'm not ready to do it. You need to completely flip this script. Resistance is not a stop sign. It is a compass. The author Stephen Pressfield famously wrote about resistance as a universal force that opposes any act of creation, growth, or healing. The rule of resistance is beautifully simple. The more important a call to action is to your soul's evolution, the more resistance you will feel toward pursuing it. You don't feel intense resistance about taking out the trash or folding the laundry. You feel intense resistance about launching your business, writing your book, ending a toxic relationship, or setting a boundary with an abusive family member. The fear you feel is directly proportional to the value of the task. Therefore, your avoidance is actually a highly accurate map pointing you exactly where you need to go, if you are terrified of speaking in public. That is the universe handing you a megaphone and telling you that public speaking is the exact skill required to elevate your career. If you are terrified of being alone, that is a glaring signal that you desperately need to spend time learning to love your own company. When you begin to view your resistance as a directional arrow rather than a warning siren, everything changes. The friction you feel is no longer your enemy. It is the friction of the match striking the matchbox. It is the necessary spark for your personal evolution. As the philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote over 2,000 years ago, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Stop looking for the path of least resistance. The life you want is exclusively found on the path of most resistance. Part 4. 3 actionable steps to face the friction. Understanding this philosophy is one thing, but actually implementing it when your heart is racing and your palms are sweating is another. You cannot just will yourself to be braver. You need a systematic approach to dismantle the avoidance. Here are 3 highly actionable, psychologically proven steps to help you face the friction today. Step 1. Micro-exposure. Avoidance thrives on overwhelming scale. When you think, I need to write a 300-page book, your brain short-circuits and you open YouTube. The solution is to radically shrink the target. You do not need to write a book today. You just need to open a Word document and write one single sentence. That's it. Give yourself permission to stop after 2 minutes. By lowering the barrier to entry so much that it becomes absurd not to do it, you bypass the amygdala's alarm system. Once you start, physics takes over. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. The hardest part is simply crossing the starting line. Step 2. Name the ghost. Fear derives its power from ambiguity. When we avoid something, we rarely define exactly what we are afraid of. We just feel a vague sense of impending doom. Grab a pen and paper and brutally define the worst-case scenario. If you send that difficult email, what is the absolute worst thing that could realistically happen? Write it down. When you force your fears out of the shadows of your mind and onto the stark reality of paper, you realize how ridiculous they often are. You realize that even if the worst happens, it is survivable. Naming the ghost strips away its power to haunt you. Step 3. Embrace the ugly first try. Perfectionism is just procrastination wearing a tuxedo. We avoid things because we are terrified of doing them poorly. You must give yourself radical permission to suck. If you are avoiding a difficult conversation, accept that your voice might shake and you might use the wrong words. If you are avoiding the gym, accept that you will feel weak and awkward on day 1. Your first attempt is not supposed to be a masterpiece. It is supposed to be rough, ugly, and flawed. You cannot refine something that does not exist. Embrace the ugly first try, and the paralyzing pressure of perfection will instantly vanish. As we come to the end, take a moment to reflect on everything we've uncovered. You now know that the anxiety you feel when avoiding a task is far more exhausting than the effort required to actually do it. You know that your comfort zone is a shrinking cage, and that the monsters guarding the doors to your future are nothing more than holograms. Most importantly, you know that your resistance is not a signal to retreat, but a compass pointing you directly toward your highest potential. The harsh reality of life is that you have to choose your pain. You can choose the sharp, temporary, acute pain of stepping into the unknown, having the hard conversation, and doing the difficult work. This is the pain of growth. It hurts for a moment, but it leaves you stronger, prouder, and closer to the life you desire. Or you can choose the dull, chronic, never-ending ache of avoidance. This is the pain of regret. It is the quiet agony of sitting in a rocking chair at 80 years old, staring out a window, and wondering who you could have become if you had only been a little braver. You cannot live an extraordinary life by making easy, comfortable choices. The universe hides your greatest rewards right behind your deepest fears. So, I leave you with this challenge. Do not let this just be another script you read, or video you consume to feel productive without doing any actual work. Identify the one thing you have been avoiding the most this week. You know exactly what it is. Apply the 2-minute rule. Embrace the ugly first try. Lean into the friction. Do it today, right now, as soon as you finish reading these words. Walk up to the locked door, turn the handle, and finally step into the life that has been waiting for you all along.